Michael Mason. No country, no badge. Just a poor bastard who thought he had friends.
This story begins in a remote corner of the world on a small island, where the only thing that stands out is a watchtower rising solitary against the sea. There lives our protagonist, a man named Mike Mason, who leads an extremely quiet life far from civilization. His routine is defined by the arrival of a supply boat that brings him the essentials for survival each week. During one of these deliveries, the man in charge of the boat decides to send his young niece, Jessie, a girl of barely 10 years old, carried the boxes to the entrance. Jessie, with the innocence of her age, does not just leave the food. She also leaves a small gift, attempting to break the ice with the mysterious inhabitant of the tower. However, Mike prefers absolute solitude. He remains hidden inside his home and avoids all eye contact. This dynamic repeats for a long time as we see Mike sharing his days only with his faithful dog. In that isolation, chess is the only hobby that seems to bring him any spark of enthusiasm. As the months pass, the situation changes slightly during one afternoon delivery. Mike happens to be outside his refuge when Jessie arrives, and she takes the opportunity to call out to him. He approaches to see what is happening, and the girl, with some frustration, complains that she has been bringing him gifts for months without receiving a single word of thanks or recognition.
Don't come up here again.
But the man simply slams the door in her face, ending the conversation. Shortly after this encounter, while Jessie tries to return to the boat with her uncle, the weather changes abruptly, and a storm of terrifying proportions breaks loose. The sea turns wild, and amidst the violent waves, the small boat capsizes, leaving the girl adrift and sinking into the depths. From his window, Mike witnesses the disaster. Without a second thought, his protective instinct kicks in. He runs to his own boat and launches a rescue, defying the force of the water. After a desperate struggle against the waves, he manages to reach Jessie, but he discovers with sorrow that the girl's uncle did not share the same fate and has passed away. Mike pulls the girl into his boat and with emergency maneuvers manages to get her to expel the water from her lungs and catch her breath. Once safe in the tower, Mike realizes that Jessie has a fairly serious wound on one of her legs. With great gentleness, he breaks the sad news about her uncle's death, leaving the girl submerged in deep grief. The next morning, he examines the injury, which turns out to be quite deep, and takes care of cleaning and bandaging it as best as he can. In the midst of her sadness, Jessie asks him why he doesn't try to locate her other relatives.
You have to take me back. You can't just keep me here.
Mike explains honestly that he knows she has no one else, as her parents had already passed away, and she only had her uncle. The girl is astonished that he knows so many details about her life, to which Mike reveals that Jessie's uncle was an old friend of his from the days they both served in the Navy, a growing bond and a hidden past. While Mike goes out to perform his usual chores, Jessie is left alone. Feeling vulnerable, she finds a knife in the house and decides to hide it among her belongings to feel protected. That same night, the trauma of the shipwreck manifests as nightmares for the little girl. Hearing her screams, Mike approaches her bed to try to calm her down.
It's just a dream.
Mike remains calm and speaks to her in a soothing voice to make her feel safe. He even takes the moment to give her a practical lesson on how to hold the knife correctly and how to truly use it if she ever finds herself in real danger. As the weeks pass, the bond between them strengthens naturally. Mike adopts a protective role, almost as if he were the father she no longer has, worrying about her meals and general well-being. Jessie, for her part, develops a special affection for Mike's dog and spends long hours playing with the animal in the garden, something that brings a spark of joy back to the home. However, Jessie's health becomes a concern once again when Mike notices that the wound on her leg is not healing as it should, and the swelling persists.
I'll get what's needed.
Aware that she needs medical supplies he doesn't have on hand, he decides to travel to the nearest coastal town. Once there, Mike acts with extreme caution. He walks with his face hidden under a cap and avoids passing in front of any security cameras, conscious that he must maintain a low profile to avoid being detected by anyone from his past. Meanwhile, The story shifts far from the island to the city of London. In a government hearing room, a man named Sam, the former head of the Secret Service, MI6, faces interrogation for creating a clandestine surveillance system known as Project Eve Adams. Despite his arguments, the authorities demand that the program be deactivated immediately. Sam seeks the support of the Prime Minister, who admits the project's utility, but refuses to back it publicly due to the upcoming elections.
It's a national embarrassment. Gonna have to steady the ship.
Ultimately, he suggests that Sam keep the system operating in the shadows and that he himself withdraw from public view for a while. Back at the coastal area, Mike takes advantage of his trip to buy some new clothes for Jesse. As he walks down the street carrying the bags, he unintentionally passes behind some young people who are recording a video for social media. That minor oversight has grave consequences. His face is captured and processed by MI6's EVA system. The information quickly reaches Rose, the new head of the intelligence agency. Upon reviewing the data, Rose discovers that Mike's face is linked to a false identity, marking him as a dangerous terrorist wanted for international attacks. Without wasting a second, she gives the order to dispatch a special forces team to the island to capture him. The following day, in the tranquility of the island, Mike finishes treating Jesse's leg, and she is overjoyed to wear her new clothes. But that peace is shattered during dinner when Mike hears strange noises coming from outside. Looking out, he sees several boats with armed agents approaching his dock. Mike, ever the cautious man, had already installed hidden defenses in the sand. As soon as the officers disembark, he detonates the explosives, causing immediate casualties among the attackers. The surviving agents try to advance, but are quickly decimated by a series of traps. One officer manages to fire at Mike, wounding him. Yet the protagonist continues to fight with astonishing ferocity, using his bare hands and speed to neutralize his opponents. In the heat of the battle, Tommy the dog tries to defend Jesse, but an agent shoots and kills him. Filled with rage, Jesse tries to attack the man, but he grabs her forcefully and begins to drag her away. Despite his injury, Mike eliminates the remaining soldiers and finally guns down the girl's captor, bringing her to safety. Heartbroken at the sight of his lifeless dog, Mike knows there is no time to mourn and forces Jesse into the boat to flee the island as quickly as possible. From the operations base, Rose watches in disbelief as her men are defeated by a single individual. She realizes she is not facing a common criminal, so she decides to turn to her deadliest agent, an operative known as James. While at sea, Jesse tries to help Mike with his bleeding and asks who these people attacking them are. He confesses that they are mistakes from his past life that have caught up with him. To prepare her, he hands her a firearm and gives her basic instructions on how to use it.
Ever use a gun?
I shot squirrels with my uncle's air rifle.
They head toward a house on the coast as Mike desperately needs medicine and bandages to keep from bleeding out. As they enter the stranger's home to find a medical kit, a young boy discovers them, and shortly after, the father appears aiming a shotgun at Mike. The tension is at its peak, but Jessie quickly intervenes by aiming her own weapon at the father, leveling the field. Seeing that Mike is truly injured, the girl begs the man to help them. Meanwhile, at the MI6 offices, an analyst discovers something disturbing. The terrorist profile associated with Mike was manually manipulated to frame him. Upon further investigation, they find that Mike Mason's real records were erased and replaced with a fake death certificate. Rose then realizes that Mike is actually a former elite agent of the agency itself. Seeking the truth, Rose confronts Sam, who has also learned that his former protege is still alive. Sam, acting on his own, sends a direct order to James. He must eliminate both Mike and the girl without a trace, identifying Mike by his old code name, Black Kite. At the house where they are sheltering, the father finishes tending to Mike. However, just as they prepare to leave, Mike realizes that the man's son has alerted the authorities.
I called the police.
He orders everyone to hide as police surround the premises. Rose monitors everything via cameras and satellites. In a moment of confusion, the father and son attempt to run away, but James, who is positioned in the distance with a precision rifle, fires and kills the father. Mike manages to get the boy to safety and escapes with Jesse through the back of the property. There, they face more police officers, but Mike disarms them, steals a patrol car, and they flee at high speed. James pursues them closely in another car, firing constantly. In a risky maneuver, Mike rams James' vehicle, running it off the road and gaining enough distance to vanish from sight. Rose calls Sam again to demand a full explanation of who Mike Mason is. Sam tells her that years ago, he created a black ops unit called Black Kite, and that Mike was his best agent, a killing machine who completed any mission. Everything changed when Sam ordered him to assassinate a foreign official who was allegedly a public threat. Mike refused to carry out the order and disappeared, leading Sam to believe he had turned traitor. Sam warns Rose that Mike is the most dangerous person alive and that she will need the full power of the state to stop him. However, Rose does not trust Sam's version of events and orders a secret investigation. She discovers that the supposed foreign official was actually a scientist named Chad, who was close to finding an affordable cure for cancer. Sam wanted to eliminate him to protect the financial interests of big pharmaceutical companies. Sam, realizing that Rose has uncovered his crimes, prepares for the worst.
Damn it, Roberto. Some people just can't help themselves.
In the car, Jesse asks Mike if she will ever have a normal family. He replies sadly that in his world, family is a weakness that enemies can use against you, and that his priority is to keep her away from that danger. They arrive at a small church to meet an old acquaintance of Mike's, Father Dick. It turns out that Dick is not just a priest, but a former MI6 computer expert who worked with Mike. Dick is shocked to see his friend alive and with a young girl. Together, they manage to hack into the EVA system to understand why they are being hunted and discover that Sam has orchestrated the entire manhunt using the false terrorist identity. Mike decides that the only way to end this is to go after Sam, and he asks Dick to look after Jesse. Dick hesitates to accept, but Jesse notices that the man is ill. Dick confesses that he has had cancer for a few months. Jesse, moved, tells him that she lost her mother to the same disease, creating an immediate bond of empathy between them. To ensure Jesse's escape, Mike decides to contact a high-ranking organized crime boss named Chen. While Dick prepares the getaway vehicle, Mike detects an intruder. It is James, who has finally tracked them down. An extremely violent hand-to-hand fight breaks out between the two agents. Both possess identical training and skills, but Mike manages to wound his opponent and uses the distraction to flee with Jesse and Dick. During the journey, Jesse asks who that terrifying man was. Dick explains that James is Mike's replacement at the agency, someone younger who does exactly what Mike used to do before he went off the grid. Eventually, Mike and Jesse part ways with Dick to enter the city and meet with Chen. Jesse questions why they cannot stay together, and he explains that as long as Sam is alive, she will never be safe by his side. He promises her he will do whatever it takes to survive, though deep down, he knows it is a promise he may not be able to keep. Upon arriving at a nightclub owned by Chen, their faces are captured by surveillance cameras, and both Rose's and Sam's teams mobilize toward the location. Inside the club, Mike speaks with Chen, who is shocked to see the legendary agent alive. Mike asks him to use his contacts to send Jesse to Spain, providing her with a new identity and money. Chen initially refuses, but Mike blackmails him, revealing that he knows everything about Chen's illegal human trafficking operations at the docks. If he doesn't help, Dick will send all that information to the police. Left with no choice, Chen agrees and hands over a passport and cash, instructing them to go to the docks to meet the transport. As they attempt to leave the club, chaos erupts. Dozens of agents from both factions storm the building. Mike becomes a whirlwind of violence, taking down enemies while trying to shield the girl. However, in the middle of the shootout, an officer manages to grab Jesse and forces her into a van. Mike radios Dick for help, who uses the city's traffic cameras to track the vehicle. Mike pursues the kidnappers, eliminates them, and recovers Jesse, who now fully understands the nightmare world her protector inhabits. They manage to reach the docks, but James reappears for the final showdown. Mike tells Jesse that she will be safe in Spain and that she can start over there. With tears in her eyes, she confesses that he is the only real family she has ever known. After an emotional goodbye, Mike helps her onto the boat belonging to Chen's men. At that moment, James arrives and Mike challenges him to a final fight. No weapons, just fists. The battle is fierce, pitting the veteran's experience against the youth's strength. After a brutal exchange of blows, Mike uses a metal object to end James' life. Exhausted but victorious, he vanishes into the shadows of the harbor. A month later, Sam is resting peacefully at his residence when he notices a strange silence. All of his bodyguards have been silently eliminated. Mike appears before him. Sam attempts one last manipulation, telling him that together they could control MI6 and make a fortune. Mike, with unshakable integrity, responds that if his interest had been money, he would have been a mercenary from the very beginning. Without another word, he fires and ends the life of the corrupt former director. The final scene takes us to a sunny restaurant restaurant in Spain, where Jessie is trying to lead a normal life. Back in London, Rose watches her through the EVA cameras, knowing that Mike must be nearby.
Wait.
It's him.
In that instant, a waiter hands Jessie a small package from a stranger. Upon opening it, she finds a chest piece, the White Queen. Jessie looks up and smiles, knowing that her friend is alive and watching over her from a distance. Mike, walking through the crowd, flashes a peaceful smile before disappearing from sight.